Thank you all for being here. I think, Josh, let's go ahead.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Um, I'm going to act as we decided. I'm going to act as an overall MC, which means I'm going to pass the mic around. So, I think that I'm going to turn it over right now to Margaret Ann, who is going to offer an opening prayer.
Hello, everyone. The Lord be with you.
And also with
So
you.
with you.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, you invite us to recognize and reverence your divine image and likeness in our neighbor. Give us strength and courage to speak out against injustice and to work for the transformation of unjust systems that keep some in bondage, that we may fully live out your kingdom here on earth through Jesus Christ, your Son. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Pastor Craig, who is going to offer a statement of welcome.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone, on these busy last weeks where we were together for a listening panel, and then yesterday for Crisis in the Holy Land, and tonight the important topic of reparations. So you almost know the welcome statement by heart that I could name. We know that because of God's grace, we welcome one another, whatever we're feeling about church, whatever the color of our skin, who we love or marry, and our gender identity. We also seek to welcome each other's differences. And maybe we don't say that. Sometimes we feel that we're preaching to the choir and everyone agrees. But from our strategic planning survey and other ways, we want to have this space and future conversations about reparations not a place where everyone agrees and says the same thing, but where we feel safe to express our questions or concerns either on behalf of ourselves or our congregation. This reparations team has worked very hard in the past year and will continue in months and years to come. And I know that even though it may surprise us, they seek not just clapping from us, but raising concerns so that this work does not represent just the 8 or so of us, but our entire community. So again, thank you for being here, and back to Josh.
Thank you, Craig. And now I'm going to turn it over to Margie, who is going to share some norms that for the purposes of the discussion and interact in this space in this meeting. So go ahead, Margie.
Yes, thank you, Josh. So at the beginning of each of the meetings that we have when we get together, we kind of have a set of norms that we all agree to for our conversation, to be respectful of each other. And so I'm putting...
Got muted somehow.
You just muted yourself.
Of course, I muted myself trying to put something in the chat. Okay. Yeah, so in the chat are the piece that we'd like to agree to. The first is to speak your truth. So being open to your thoughts and feelings and not just saying what you think other people want to hear. Stay engaged in the conversation. Be open to experiencing discomfort, because with discomfort comes a dialogue and the understanding of each other, and can bring healing and change along with it. Also, then number 4 is share time. So that means to respect each other in listening and talking and kind of balancing that with others. Respecting of others has to do with letting a person finish what they're saying before you talk. Then keeping an openness means that an openness to knowing that the stories you share here are your stories. And so I would not want to take your stories out of this event. So listen to the stories and take away the learnings rather than the story itself. And then expect and accept that there's not going to be closure. Discussion continues, and there won't be solutions, and that's okay. And then we're going to respect everyone's time by being done on time, and so keeping to our schedule in that respect. Back to you, Josh.
Thanks, Margie. And then the last sort of introductory stop is there are, this number might be wrong, 6 or 7 members of our committee. I see Barb's hand.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, could we, by raising your hand, or could we just get an agreement to those norms from everybody?
Thanks, everybody. So the last, we're going to introduce the members of the team, the people that have been working on these reparations, this meeting and other work surrounding reparations, which there are 6 or 7 or 8 of us. I'll just leave a range and then I won't get it wrong. So I can start. My name's Josh Brown. I use he, him pronouns. I have been connected with Holy Trinity for apparently 10 years because South Loop, that Loop thing started 10 years ago. And, you know, I feel like anti-racism work has been important to me primarily first, I think, as an educator. I work as a high school teacher, and it's come along in my job, and now it's here. I'm glad to have this interaction with the church too. So maybe I will pass it along to Craig. Did you want to be this part too, or I'll pass it to Craig, and Craig can pass it along if he wants to.
I'm working with this team also, and was part of a pastoral accountability circle a year ago. I've been doing much reading and reflecting, and I'm glad to be leading us forward in this way. We're a leader in the synod in this area. I will pass to Barb Waller.
Thanks, Craig. I'm Barbara Waller, she, her pronouns. I've been a member of Holy Trinity Lakeview since 1985 and have been actively involved in anti-racism work in the Synod and at Holy Trinity and otherwise for more than 20 years. It's the lens through which I've come to see the world, and I feel compelled to do this work as a child of God. I will pass it to Margaret Ann.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Barb. So, most of you know me as Ann, and that's great. Some people call me Margaret Ann. I've been a member of Holy Trinity, I think, for 23 years. I'm going to say 23 years, for quite a while. And as Craig was talking earlier about our mission statement, we're just called to live out our, I don't know, anti-racism work to me is just part of our walk. Like, we're called to live out our faith in the world and to work for justice. And that is why I feel compelled and called to this work. And let's see, I'm Anna.
Hey, everybody. I'm Anna Vegan, she, her pronouns. Josh and I are co-facilitators of the reparations team, and been a member with my wife Allison since February 2005, something like that. So kind of a lot of time. And I love being a member. It's a very, very important part of my life, being in this congregational community. I teach Christian ethics at Loyola, and a lot of focus within that has been on white anti-racism, health and healthcare disparities, climate change, and socioeconomic and racial ethnic inequality, and racial justice. So it's also a vocational passion. I'm going to pass on now to, has Chris been able to join us yet? No? How about Carrie? I see Carrie.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Fleming, he, him, his. I've been a member of Holy Trinity also, I think, for about 23 years. I've been interested in anti-racism work for a good chunk of my life, worked in a number of different ways. And I've always been grateful to be part of a congregation that engaged in such a ongoing and powerful way. It means a lot to me. And I will pass to Margie.
Thank you, Carrie. My name is Margie Shannon. I use pronouns she, hers, and I've probably been at Holy Trinity maybe 16, 17 years, going to Lakeview. And much like Anna, I work at a graduate school, and so that kind of brings you into that arena. And so for me, I just believe of working towards justice, that it just makes sense that everyone should be free and have equal opportunities. And so it's something that I'm passionate about. I don't know that Chris has joined us. Chris, if you have, please unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will go back to Josh.
I guess I think Pastor Michelle has been involved in definitely in our work too. I don't know if you want to say anything. I wanted to invite you if you wanted to.
Hi, I'm here. Yeah, y'all know me. I'm Pastor Michelle Sevick, she, her pronouns, and I've been on the anti-racism team and also working kind of peripherally with the reparations task force. But good to be here tonight.
Thanks. I think that's everyone right now who's been on the team is here. I think so. Thank you all. We wanted to start the meeting. We wanted you to know who we were, but we're also really interested. I mean, like I think Craig said at the beginning, we are interested in hearing from you. We are interested in this being an interactive space. I know that sometimes on Zoom that can be a challenge, or it can be intimidating, or it can require courage to speak up, but we would like to hear from you. And the question we wanted to start with is, there's a couple different ways to ask it. I'll just ask, the one formulation is, when you hear the word reparations and you think in this context, what comes to mind? This could be associations, concerns, questions, but just in general. And we really want to leave some space to hear where you're at right now about reparations. One other addendum. So I love it if people could use the hand raise icon, or if you can't, if you're not quite sure, you can just use your hand. And also, I'm going to post a link if you are more interested in sharing something completely anonymously. We wanted to make a space for that too. So I'm going to put that link in the chat.
So you can speak your idea or association, or you could put a word or phrase in the chat, or you can anonymously share something. Your association when you hear that word reparations. There it is now.
That's the anonymous one. Yeah, I'm gonna hold the space. So we'll just feel free to raise your hand or speak up. See, Ariel is raising their hand. Ariel, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Ariel. I use they, them pronouns. If you don't know me, I'm the music assistant here at Holy Trinity. And I also identify as a Black American. I'm not on camera because I'm in my pajamas, but to be very transparent, usually when I hear the term reparations, my first association is an eye roll, because just in my experience, there's so much, or there has been so much talk about what it means, who it should be for, if it's even relevant, and all the things. And rarely does any action ever come out of that.
Thank you, Ariel. I appreciate your speaking first. Thank you. Yeah, I see Pastor Michelle mentioned repair. Margie mentioned recognizing something has been taken from someone else. Yeah, maybe we can even just at the level of word association, that word reparation, what other things come up for you all?
Patty, is your hand raised?
Oh, sure.
Yes, because I don't know how to use Zoom very well. Sorry, so I'll just raise my hand. I think reparations for me, it's just such a big word, right? And it's so overwhelming, and I don't even know how to start effectively thinking about it, right? And I think, Ariel, this ties into kind of what you said, like there's just so many things to talk about and so many ways to approach it. And I'm interested to see what this group is doing on how to at least narrow some of it down so that we can be effective and move forward with something, right? Because the ocean's big. So how do you break it down into pieces that are manageable? That's what I think of when I hear the word itself. It's just a big word.
Thank you, Patty. Yeah, and that the size of the scope of the potential issues that it raises. Yeah, I hear you. Any other?
Actually commented in the chat that it's a very politically loaded term and that her immediate thought is divisive. I'm wondering if anyone else finds it scary or off-putting, alienating, or yay.
I do appreciate this free flow of chat entries. Thank you.
Ed has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks,
All
Karen.
right, let's see all the hands. Go ahead.
I kind of feel I'm in the same camp as Patty on this, that to me it seems somewhat arbitrary in what we're doing, or what we're trying to do, in part because what without knowing what a standard is, it's hard to judge whether or not we're doing the right things or addressing this the proper way. And I know it's a big bite, and somebody you got to take a bite at some point and start eating it. But where to even begin? There seems to be so many different details or so many different questions that come out of this that I'm really interested to hear what the group has found and what you've come away with as an action plan, because to me, it seems so very confusing.
Thank you. I think I heard Ed is the name that I heard someone say. Thank you, Ed.
Do we have anything in the Google Doc, Josh?
Sorry, no, there's not anything in the Google Doc right now.
Well, those are great initial thoughts. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think one thing I just want to say real quick in response. I heard, so Robin Rue Simmons, who we might talk about later on, who has had a lot to do with the Evanston municipal reparations, something that I heard her say was really moving. She said, "You must begin." And then she just paused and she said, "You must begin." And I hear a lot of people's, I really took some strength in what she had shared. And we'll get into some more details for sure. So I see a couple more things in the chat too. That idea of being iconoclastic. Appreciate that word, Sarah. And to, yeah. So why don't we go ahead and thank you all. We were scared that no one would talk because I don't know, but I appreciate folks talking and chatting. I appreciate that. So we did want to fill you in a little bit more about our specific story about how we got here and then what the action plan or plans are. So I'm going to first turn it over to Carrie, who's going to tell us a little bit about how we got here. So sound good, Carrie?
Great, thank you, Josh. Hi, everyone. Good evening again. Yeah, we thought that before we actually moved into any large part of a presentation about our update about our work and all that, it'd be good if we took a step back and just kind of reflected on where we started, what led us to where we are tonight. I know that from what I've heard and from who's in this room, pretty much all of you know that Holy Trinity's had an anti-racism ministry for many, many years. I know also that many of you in this room have participated in that ministry over the years, and we thank you all for that. And yet in all those years, certainly the years that I've been involved with it, I don't remember hearing reparations ever being studied, if the topic was even ever mentioned in all that time, certainly not in any ongoing kind of way, nor do I ever remember hearing the topic discussed in Sunday sermons. That changed in the year 2021. Pastor Ben Adams was still at Holy Trinity at the time, and he was heading up our anti-racism ministry. He brought the idea to the group that as part of Holy Trinity's observance of Black History Month that year, that the ministry would hold a series of forums to discuss reparations, two each in Lakeview and the Loop on alternating weeks. I think we did them on a Sunday, of course, the Loop probably on a Saturday, but nevertheless, each alternating weeks. And to serve as a starting point and the anchor for these sessions, Ben chose the 2014 Atlantic Magazine article, The Case for Reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates, an article that the author wrote in support of and detailing the necessity for reparations only after he himself had initially rejected the idea out of hand. Now, at the time of these forums, we were still in the grips of the pandemic, so we held them all on Zoom. And Ben would open each of the meetings with a different prompt on the topic. Then we'd have some general discussion, after which we broke into smaller breakout rooms for some more concentrated discussion. And I helped facilitate, and I'm sure some of the rest of you did too, help facilitate some of these groups, or all of the groups. And they were, for me, the best part of each of the meetings. The participants in the rooms were asked to freely share their ideas, their thoughts, questions, concerns, or even pushbacks on or struggles with the topic of reparations, and what part they thought or imagined the Holy Trinity might play in reparations going forward. Every one of these discussions was extremely helpful and informative, and each of them ended with everyone who participated agreeing on the same thing, that we and Holy Trinity must keep the conversation going. Not any idea where it was going, but that we must keep it going. And then we didn't. We didn't initially keep the conversation going. We had lapsed for about a year. And then some of us in the ministry took the question of whether we engage in it back to our pastors to gauge their interest in reparations and whether they thought it was something Holy Trinity as a whole should engage in. And they agreed that we should. After that, several things happened. A smaller task force group was formed from our ministry to study the topic and put together some ideas on how we might proceed. That work resulted in a proposal that was then again presented to our pastors, which they approved. And from there, it was agreed that our anti-racism ministry would then concentrate solely on reparations, at least for the time being. The church council was also tasked to create a line item in our budget for reparations only as a placeholder should we decide at some future date that our contributions to reparations would be monetary. And with those steps, we began a journey of discovery, a journey of education, and a journey of discernment for ourselves in the group, certainly, but also for the congregation as a whole. Realizing that none of us involved in any of this work was any kind of expert, and knowing only, as you heard a moment ago, that we wanted to begin, we as a team then took a series of additional steps. First, in an effort to strengthen our relationship as a team, we each had one-on-one conversation with every other member of the team. Then we expanded the scope of those conversations to include members of the congregation, conversations designed for the team to folks to learn the knowledge of and thoughts about reparations as a whole and Holy Trinity's participation in them. We're continuing to have these conversations. I know a number of you here participated in them, and we're going to hear more about those later on. Second, To educate ourselves and to anchor our work, our team participated in a several days-long workshop with other organizations from around the country to learn where to begin our journey and what ways to proceed. We used a curriculum called Sacred Reckonings, which you're also going to hear a bit more about as we move forward tonight. Next, we turn to history, with the goal of learning where our city, where our neighborhood, and where Holy Trinity itself have played a part in the harms done for which reparations were proven to be necessary. And now, and in recent months, both our pastors have begun to speak passionately about reparations during Sunday worship. All those steps are being taken to help us on the team, as well as the entire congregation, to come to a better understanding of where and how Holy Trinity fit into the larger canvas, as it were, of reparations, and where and what concrete steps we may ultimately take to address the issue. You heard a bit about it before, but this journey, the same type of journey is taking place in a lot of other parts of the country. California has had a large task force working on reparations for some years and released a series of recommendations on how to address it just last year. New York has been similarly engaged. And just to our north, as Josh was pointing out, the city of Evanston passed a law through their city council to approve reparation and has already begun to make payments to some of its citizens. Our group actually participated in a forum hosted by Lakeview Lutheran Church, in which we spoke to the alderwoman, as Josh pointed out, who spearheaded that effort in Evanston. Interestingly enough, across the pond, Lloyd's of London recently just dedicated upwards of $60 million toward reparation payment tied directly to their participation in the transatlantic slave trade. And right here in Chicago, just last week, Mayor Brandon Johnson backed the creation of a subcommittee to study reparations, what the city's response to it may be, earmarking $500,000 in his 2024 budget to support and fund the panel's work. And all that stuff brings us here tonight. And you'll hear more detail, as I said, about some of the things I've just touched on and our work going forward. Now, as I mentioned, this is a journey we've undertaken. We on the team, of course, will be continuing this journey, but it isn't just our journey, and whatever decisions we finally come to are not ours alone to make. This is a congregation-wide effort. As I stated before, none of us here are experts. We don't know where we'll eventually land on reparation. We're focused on the journey right now rather than on any specific end goal. And we were also cognizant of the fact that all the things that I just mentioned in various other places have each received pushback for one reason or another. People being wildly supportive on the one hand, and people finding fault and criticizing on the other, because, as was stated, this is such a fraught and such a complicated issue. So we continue. We're a long way from any type of goal, but we do believe that as a church body and a community of faith, that we are called to learn and discern what God's plan for us at this moment is regarding this incredibly important topic. Our invitation to each of you, after you hear the update of our work that's gone on so far, is that you join in that journey with us. We need to hear each voice, every thought, every perspective, all the ideas, and every opinion on all sides of the issue to help us move forward in the work. There are many ways you can become involved, which again will be discussed at the end of this meeting. We sincerely hope that all of you will decide to do just that. We know that some of you have been involved in anti-racism. We know some of you have begun with the reparations. We know some of you who've talked a one-on-one conversation with us. Those are some of the ways you can still get involved. There are many others. We hope you make that decision. Thank you. And I will turn it back over to Josh.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks very much for that story, the set of stories. I appreciate the context. It helped me too to think through some of this. So next I was going to have Anna. Anna was going to speak a bit about some of the different more specific learning and curriculum. Well, I'll just let her. Some of the more specific actions we have taken since we've convened as this particular team. So yeah,
Thank you. And I'm going to try to be brief so that, again, if you want to ask questions and make comments, that there's ample time to do that. I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you a link here before I do. This is the curriculum that we started out using that is free, that has been put together by an interfaith and ecumenical team. Pastor Craig mentioned that he was part of a 6-month or 7-month consultation with some of the creators of this curriculum. And we also, as a team, participated in some online seminars. And now I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you here that you can download your own copy if you wish, and that it is got online. If you take a look at the online versions, there are embedded links to videos and other articles, and it's a really rich curriculum that we're still making our way through. It's not something that we have at all finished working with, but it's been really helpful to us. And one of the most, and in part why we started with conversations, one-on-one conversations, is because of its suggestion, this curriculum suggesting that that's really the beginning, is having one-on-ones with folks in the congregation, and that is ongoing. But also one of the very first things that we were introduced to is this reparatory eco map, because I have to tell you, before I was on this task force, I had a pretty narrow understanding of reparations, thinking that it was only about the wealth return piece, or a check, or how much money, or how long term do congregations and others give. And what they really pointed out to us, the leaders in this curriculum and of the workshops, is that there are many facets to repair. And before you get to wealth return, not that this is a linear process, or you start at A and you finish at E or whatever, or Z, but a very fundamental part of the process is truth telling. So reparations can look very different. Repair looks very different depending on the particular kinds of relationships you're trying to repair. There isn't a blanket apology, right? When you have hurt somebody's feelings, you don't just generically say something, you try to really address the harm to repair that relationship with that loved one. So we're in the process of learning more about our history as a congregation, how we came to be where we are and on Addison, and also the space that we rent at the South Loop, and where our earlier iterations of our congregation was, who the founders were. And to that end, we have contracted with a historian and archivist, and her name is Hilary Mack Austin, who has published her own books and historical works. And she is looking at our addresses and at where there were restrictive covenants, meaning you couldn't buy into a neighborhood unless you were white, where racial redlining was at work and how that affected the neighborhoods that our congregation was living in. There were early things happening as well around the GI Bill, and that Black and brown folks could not equally benefit from that, or from the housing loans offered through that and things like that. So she's helping us learn more about our specific history of how we came to be a church or congregation and where we are. So the other piece then, beyond that truth telling, and we will have a forum for the whole congregation in which we will share what we are learning and with you all about that. But that's not, again, the only piece. It's also about spiritual practice. So again, incorporating more attention to repair in our Sunday and Saturday worship and through the music. One church in Evanston, a Lutheran church who's interested in doing repair, whenever they sing or hear something that is attributed to Black and brown people, whether credit is given or not, especially when it's not given, they make sure that they pay a donation into a fund for Black musicians. For example, a lot of spirituals, like we just sang one last Sunday, they don't have an author, or there's not a place to credit the composer the way that we do with other copyrighted material. It's just open source. And so to give money for when we are able to sing and enjoy and hear music from minoritized communities that haven't been recognized or compensated for their work. But it's also through sermons and through prayers and through confession and forgiveness, and just, how can we continue to weave more a sense of repair into our liturgical experiences. Then another piece are what kind of relationships do we want to build, coalitions and alliances. We're already a part of several, and including the Lighthouse Ministry, and we have in the past been connected to a predominantly Black Lutheran church called Holy Families. And there may be other relationships in our neighborhoods that we want to explore and build. And the idea is that we, as a predominantly white congregation, can't come up with what reparations mean all on our own. We need to consult with minoritized members of our own church, but also decide through these partnerships to whom the specific accountabilities are that we want to develop. We're not going to be able to make up for everything that has been done because of colonization and taking the lands of indigenous persons and through the transatlantic slave trade. But yet we can do something. We can repair certain relationships. So we, in conjunction with building these alliances, can help discern what kind of relationships we want to focus on and what repair looks like in consultation with people, others. And that also includes how we show up politically.
Yep.
Is there a question? Okay. And then also how we show up politically in terms of, again, what we already do a lot of this, right? It's just more in terms of bringing a level of intentionality. And finally, then, what does wealth return look like? It doesn't mean anything particular necessarily. Different congregations are doing different things. Some are giving out of their endowment, some are raising money each year, some are sponsoring different kinds of scholarships and grants, or subsidizing other churches that need more financial support. So form follows function. What reparations looks like for us and for our church is a process of discovery and discussion and dialogue within ourselves, and also in these alliances that we're bringing and what we're learning about our own history. I hope that that's clear and that I haven't gone too quickly. Again, that's in the curriculum from Sacred Reckonings. Finally, as others have mentioned, I'll just mention that in addition to the archivist that we've been talking to and have now contracted with for some initial work, we've had a terrific conversation with Robin Bruce Simmons, who was that Evanston alderperson who spearheaded reparations for the city of Evanston and was told it's never going to happen, and it did indeed happen. She's not the only reason that it happened, but she's a huge reason. And if you want to learn more about what happened in Evanston's, this is a great documentary that you can watch, I think still on PBS here in Chicago. I'll put the link when I'm done speaking in the chat, on the big payback and what the city of Evanston did. Certainly their model will not be our model. We're not a city. They do have congregational involvement in Evanston as well. And we've met with 2 pastors from Evanston who are doing their own kind of, there's a coalition of churches doing their own kind of parallel process around reparations. And again, for each of those member congregations, reparation is something distinct. They're not all doing the same thing. And then finally, just to let you know that we have been speaking, oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted. We've been speaking with Cam Howard briefly, who is really a mentor and a founder of the reparations movement. He's here in Chicago, and we spoke briefly with him, and he too would be interested and available to speak with our congregation and tell us more about the contextual history of reparations as part of coming to a sense of what this is all about and what it might mean for us, and historically what's been going on and the rationale. He may speak with us, he may not, but he's someone that we've at least consulted with because he really is an expert in this area. So in the coming weeks, and we will hopefully hear a report from the historian Mac Austin about our congregational history. We hope to have more one-on-ones with all of you, and again, any of you that wants to speak with us, ask a question, raise a concern, just please reach out to us. Our emails are in the directory, but we can also put them in the chat here. You can speak with any member of the team, and would be delighted to sit down with you. And then we will be building these relationships and thinking step by step what reparations means. And we need to have many more conversations with the congregation, truth telling, exploring different options. This is not a project for this small committee or task force. We need to own this as a congregation and take a vote on it ultimately in terms of what kind of wealth return we decide upon. Are there any questions that I go too quickly? Would you like me to say more about what wealth return means? Why it's different than charity. It's not just making a donation, it's returning things that we had unfair advantages to in the first place to accumulate. That was a lot.
How about maybe some reflections, thoughts? How did this impact, or how did it land for you?
Asking the group, in other words. If you again would like to put something in the chat, or if you'd rather use that Google form anonymously, for those of you who might have joined a little late, Josh can reshare that link. You can also raise your hand and verbally say something. I see Carol.
Hi, thanks so much. I just want to thank you very much for this degree of specificity. It's extremely helpful. And I just wanted to say thanks in person for all you're doing and for working hard to bring us all up to speed. And I really look forward to hearing what Austin discovered. Thanks.
I can, I really encourage you all to take a look at that curriculum. Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I want to thank you all for your time. I really appreciated the sort of expanded definition of reparations that you went over, Anna. I think that for me, that was really helpful to sort of think about what this would look like to us as a church. I'm just wondering if the committee's kind of going to go over, what the next steps are regarding, everyone in the church, sort of like what you're going to be looking at from us.
Well, I think when we have kind of a report from Hillary Mack Austin, we will schedule a kind of congregational forum. I'd like that to be in person or at least hybrid. We had, gosh, so many people at the forum yesterday on the Middle East crisis, and that was so phenomenal. Many, many thanks to Raneem and Carol and Ryan for that. And so I think we'd like to do something like that as well. But it's not just a one-off thing. So there might also be a time with Cam Howard, that person I mentioned, or we might decide to actually have a movie night and watch The Big Payback together. Or we could have a couple members of our church talk about, like in my case, my grandparents on both sides, my great-grandparents immigrated from Norway and Germany in the late 1800s. Struggled, had a lot of hard work, but they were also given incentives to settle land. And from my grandfather's generation of having an eighth grade education, his two daughters both went to college, and then his grandchildren all have at least a college degree, if not a PhD or master's. And he helped fund all of our education through some of those incentives that he inherited, kind of. So we can do that kind of personal storytelling of how we got to be where we are in some ways. And then through more conversations with the team and discerning who are we in partnership with around, again, it's not just white people deciding what reparations means, but how can we better discern how we want to return wealth in which areas. It could be around racial justice and climate change and climate mitigation, could be around housing and affordable housing, or public transportation infrastructure, or there's a lot of ways, education and educational early childhood intervention. Or again, supplementing what a congregation can do that they can't do on their own. They're predominantly people of color and they don't have the same financial resources, and helping them to be able to do more with that. Again, and also having a land acknowledgement statement in our bulletins every Sunday and on our website. Thinking how we do worship, continue to do amazing worship, but just keep building on that and bringing intentionality around that. And that's
Right.
where we need you again. We need others, and we need this congregation to be with us on the journey, instead of saying, oh, I'm glad that this small group of people is doing this. That's why I go to this church, because those people over there are doing this. We need you. We need you to be involved in some way or another.
Right now, I think a lot of our kind of the next step is to get the conversation really moving in the congregation. One-on-ones between the people that are on this task force and members of the congregation, but just having opportunities for people to talk about it and get the idea out there and think about what it means to you individually, to Holy Trinity as a congregation, and just start having the conversations.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Josh, did you see anything in the form that you want to bring to our attention? You're muted.
Thus far, no.
Okay.
No one's. I did
So-
want to add, I don't know if this is helpful, maybe it feels repetitive. I think in terms of next steps, that the ring of the concentric, or the overlapping circles that Anna shared, I really think just in our meetings week to week, or we I don't know if we've said this, but we basically meet every 2 weeks and we try to figure out ways to move this forward. And Anna has done a whole bunch of stuff, but as have others, but Anna especially, reaching out and keeping all of these conversations going with all these different people that aren't in the church. So all 5 of those circles are there are active projects and processes that I think we're thinking through, reaching out, discussing, writing, researching, whatever it is. And that it's the one, I guess the gift and challenge is that it's not linear. So it's a little hard to enumerate what the next step is, but those are a bunch of next steps.
And our emails are popping up in the chat now, if any of you want to copy them. I'll hand it back to Josh.
So, I mean, our final agenda item was that Barb was gonna, Barb, did you want to ask some more direct questions, or?
Josh, can I
Yeah.
also say that
Yeah.
Chris joined us, and
sure.
we
Hi,
can
Chris.
let her introduce herself and share
Before we leave.
Yes. Bring yourself into the room, Chris.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be a part of this initial group, and I'm looking forward to being able to be a part of the larger group as a whole. I come from also a farming community where I was the first person to receive a college degree. But once again, in looking, we just got done selling our family farm, and you look at the abstract, and the land that our farm is on was originally owned by the railroad, which got it from the United States of America back in 1880. But it's not hard to figure out how that land came to be in the possession of the railroad. So the story actually goes much further back. And I like what Anna said about the fact that each one of us can be telling our stories about, in essence, the humble beginnings, sure, but leaving every other possible race behind. So I come from a farming background. I moved to the city a long time ago. I've now lived off the farm longer than on it. But that that was a huge part for me of wanting to be a part of discovering more about myself and my background, and being able to move forward with what I feel is important work in reparations. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Margie, for noticing. I had seen Chris come in, but thanks for remembering. And hi, Chris. Thanks. So
One last external thing, you could check out the folded map project that really maps different neighborhoods, same street, but on the north or south side, that kind of thing. We've been in touch with that creator, Tanika Lewis, and we could have an art exhibit as well, or ask her to present about that project potentially. So that's another idea for the future.
I was going to ask if Barb, I think you had some questions you maybe wanted to ask. So are you still feeling like that, or
yeah, I've got some kind of, and I'm going to put these in the chat. I'm also going to kind of suggest, since we only have a few minutes left, that maybe you take these away with you and think about them, and feel free to share your feedback as things bubble up. So some of the things that we wanted to kind of throw out there for you to think about is, either before or since after viewing this presentation, what hopes do you have for reparations at Holy Trinity? What fears may you have for reparations at Holy Trinity? What advice do you have for those of us that are kind of leading this movement going forward? And what do we need to consider that hasn't been brought up yet? So if you have any thoughts about these, feel free to throw them in in the next 5 minutes or so. Oh, Annika.
One of the things that I'm very hopeful for, or I'm really excited about, is I'm really excited about like the connections that we're forming with other organizations, and I look forward to like events that we can like host or attend in the future, where we're like interacting with like different organizations and or congregations. Like the idea of like an art gallery, or like there was that one time that we had like singers from another church like come and like sing, and like their pastor preached here, and like things like that. I'm excited for like more of that to be happening.
Great, thank you. I would agree. Any other thoughts? No, Margie said that was what happened in conjunction with Lighthouse. I'm taking it since, oh, Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, I just, I think something that is in the back of my mind all the time, and I'm thinking that that's probably in the back of many people. We live in such a society that always stresses that there's not enough for everybody, and so we don't live in a in a community where everyone has enough. We always strive to be the one that has, because we don't want to be the one that has not. And I think that's a fear with a lot of people who are white, that they're just so afraid that if we give up some sort of control, that which we really don't have, shouldn't control, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But if you give up all that control, then all of a sudden we won't have. And how do you change that whole scenario to help people understand there is enough for everybody? There's enough for everybody of what we all need if we just start paying attention to that. So that's always on my mind.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts? If not, I don't see anybody else
I wanted to
Oh, go
interject
ahead.
real quick. There's just, I know that Ariel has previously shared this idea of micro reparations, and you know, we've had a conversation. I just wanted to put the link out there if that's something that people are interested in reading further about. I'm gonna put that here.
Thank you.
But yeah, go. I think we're close to closing, Barb. If you want to go ahead and
Yep.
yeah.
And again, this is just the beginning of any feedback you want to give us, any conversations, please. be in
Right.
touch.
This is not the end by any means. I want to thank you all for being present. I, for one, am really overwhelmed and a little teary at seeing how many people showed up. So thank you. So thank you for being here, for your sharing. We hope you will continue to be involved in this church-wide journey. This is not just the team. This is something that we are all in, and we really, and it's going to be ongoing. We need to hear from anybody. I think you've probably gotten that by now. So I'd like to close with prayer. Christ has no body now on earth but yours, no hands but yours, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which Christ's compassion is to look out to the world. Yours are the feet with which Christ is to go about doing good. Yours are the hands with which Christ is to bless all people now. Amen. Peace be with you all.
Awesome. Good
Thanks.
night.
And everybody, it's good to see everybody. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Good
Good night. Thanks, Josh.
Mhm.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.